Thank you. Council, what is your wish? Councilor Mason.
Happy to move it, Mayor. I move that the Executive Standing Committee recommends that Halifax Regional Council 1 approve Halifax Regional Municipality entering into an information sharing agreement with the province that in the determination of the returning officer is the same as or is substantially similar to the draft set out in attachment 1 of the staff report dated February 16, 2024, and authorize and direct the mayor and municipal clerk to execute this agreement on behalf of the municipality, and 2, authorize the municipal clerk to negotiate and execute agreements to use information on behalf of the municipality that, in the determination of the returning officer, are substantially in the form and content of attachment 2 of the staff report dated February 16th, 2024. I so move.
Second.
Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councilor Mason, anything on it?
No, prepared to go to the question if there's no questions from anyone else.
If anybody else wishes to, you can put your name in the chat. If not, Madam Clerk, how are we doing the vote?
It would just be a show of hands.
Okay. Show of hands and or voice. Well, let's do show of hands. I think I see if everybody can sign in. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. 13.1.2, the Halifax Regional Municipality and CSAP elections, election methods and alternative voting dates.
I can put that motion on the floor if you like, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy.
So move that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council 1 adopt option 1 as outlined in attachment A of the staff report dated January 31st, 2024, and direct A, that personal, computer, and telephone voting be used as a method of voting in the 2024 HRM and CSAP elections during the alternative polling days. B, that internet voting be used as the only method of voting in the 2024 HRM and CSAP elections at the in-person advanced polls. And C, that paper ballots be used as the only method of voting on ordinary polling day. 2, set the dates for the alternative voting period to commence on Tuesday, October 8, 2024 at 8 a.m. and run continuously through to Wednesday, October 16, 2024 at 7 p.m. And 3, direct that staff undertake a resourcing study after the conclusion of the 2024 municipal election that contemplates an election conducted entirely through alternate voting for the Halifax Regional Municipality, including any required legislative changes to the Municipal Elections Act.
Second.
Second, Councillor Cuddle. Deputy Mayor, anything to it?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Are we ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? That is carried. Thank you. 13.2.1 is understanding the history of Africville.
I'll be pleased to put the motion on the floor, and I have a question for staff. I move that the Executive Standing Committee direct the Chief Administrative Officer to research beginning with Campbell Road settlement using available municipal resources and other information provided to the municipality to understand the history of Africville up to the February 24th, 2010 apology date.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Councillor Cuddle. Councillor Mason.
I want to acknowledge for the record for the audience that I saw Councillor Hensby trying to find his unmute button to second that motion. So I saw the phone shaking around. Okay, I think this is, I think it's important to understand past harms and for us to acknowledge them and to talk about what happened in that to that community through that entire time frame. It's just, I guess the question to staff is, this isn't as for a staff report about what that would look like. It's not asking what the resources would be, and the objective is a little unclear to me. To understand the history of Africville, I guess if it's like to document the history of Africville, that's a huge process, right? That could be a huge academic and community exercise for a really long time. So I guess what was the discussion at the African Descent Advisory Committee about what the intent was, what the outcome was hoped for this? Because I can see this being a small, probably not, a medium, probably at least, and potentially a huge project. So looking for a bit of clarity from staff, because I think we need it on the record so we are providing some clarity going forward. Thank you.
I see that Tracy Jones Grant has joined us. We'll go to TJG.
Through you, Chair, to the counselor. Counselor Mason, this particular motion has caused considerable discussion at the African Descent Advisory Committee. There are members who want as much information as possible about Africville. We've tried to temper the motion as much as possible. We were very specific by saying using available municipal resources so that we're not searching every archive everywhere. As far as an outcome, that has also been difficult for us to determine as staff to the committee, what they hope will come out of this. So our intent in looking at this is just for our purposes to provide the support to the committee is to gather whatever municipal information we have on Africville, present that to the committee, and then I'm assuming that they will then look at what they want to do with that information. We are not looking at doing a huge research project. As you are aware, our team has limited resources. We tried to explain this to the African Descent Advisory Committee, but they were pretty insistent on getting more information about Africville and what's happened up to the 2010 apology. So that's pretty much where we're at, gathering some information for them to provide to them, for them to then determine, I suppose, next actions. We do have upcoming for them a presentation on the Africville visioning process. We're hoping that will temper some of what it is that they're looking for. We're not quite sure. It's been a bit difficult to kind of contain this request.
I appreciate the candor, Ms. Jones-Grant, I do. And, so it puts us in a difficult situation where I want to support that committee and I want to support that community. And I am supportive of uncovering what led to the tremendous harm caused by the city of Halifax when the expropriation and removal of that community happened. But I'm also worried, I want to say that all clearly before I say, I don't see enough clarity in this motion to make sure that the committee and the community isn't further disappointed by what comes back. And that concerns me. I feel like we need an iterative process of discovery with them to make sure we actually get there. I see the CAO has her hand up, so I'll stop talking.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I thank you, Councillor Mason, for raising this question. I think it is important for us to try to manage the expectations of the committee and also the broader community that there will be anything new coming out of this. I think one of the things that may be helpful for us to provide as part of this report is the listing of, there's been numerous FOIPOP requests over the year or documents released. A lot of the historical information actually now resides with the Africville Heritage Trust Society. So I don't suspect there's a lot of additional detail that hasn't already been released and provided to either academics and historians doing research in the past or to the Africville Heritage Trust.
Thank you, folks. Councillor Cuttle has a question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Tracy, I'm just wondering if you could remind us what the mandate of the committee is and how this project would help advance or fit with that mandate.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the mandate of the committee is essentially to provide advice on municipal initiatives, projects, and each representative is supposed to bring to the table issues or concerns related to municipal government from their respective communities. So that's kind of the mandate. I have to say this committee is very new. We are still working very closely with them to understand their mandate and their role and how they have influence. This particular piece of work is one that seems to keep coming up. And as much as we keep speaking about our move forward, the things that we're doing, the committee keeps coming back to this piece of work. I think we can provide a report for them that details, this is what's happened. Here's where we're going. We want to focus on here's where we're going and where people will have influence. We've got a lot of exciting things happening or that will happen in the future in relation to Africville. So we're trying to move them a bit from focusing so much on the past and really looking at how we engage and do things in the future. But their mandate really is, we as staff try to bring forward things that they can provide input on. So for example, it's done now, but we would have brought the Cultural Heritage Priorities Plan, or we bring Halifax information, and we bring those things to the committee so they can put an Afrocentric lens on those pieces of work. So that's really what we're trying to do with the committee. Again, they're very new, and there's some confusion as to where they have influence or where they can provide feedback to us. So we're still working through some of that. But as I've said, this particular motion has created quite a bit of conversation. And as much as staff were advisors to the committee, we can't tell them, no, this isn't a good idea. Even when we do, if the committee chairs decide that this is something they want to move forward, we're staff advisors. So this is a decision of the committee, and as staff, we're trying to figure out ways to support this particular motion.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that answer. I had a kind of a similar discussion on the Active Transportation Committee, like understanding the role of being an advisory committee to council versus being an advocacy role, to the municipality and other levels of government, right? And trying to really understand where the focus of committees should lie. But it does seem to me that because there's going to be so much stuff happening in Africville coming up, an opportunity for discussion, like having that foundational piece is important. So I very much appreciate kind of the spirit of this. But I could see the value and the use of it 100%. But similarly, I have some concerns that Councillor Mason raised about making sure that, as we move forward, the work that's being done is being done in a way that helps advance, those other pieces in a way that is informative and helpful and constructive. And so it's, but making sure that the committee is in line with what's happening. I think Councillor Mason spoke to that very well. Okay, I can't, did someone else have their hand up here? Wait, I'm gonna beep off. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Councillor. We're undertaking as council a fairly significant piece of work on Africville now, which is a years-long probably project. And I'm wondering, Tracy, if you can, or anybody else with you, Russell or Tamara, anybody, how this would work with that. But secondly, this would take some time, I assume, to come back. Just wondering if you have a sense on how long it might take if it passed.
So yes, so we have the visioning project that is happening. We're into phase 1 right now. The consultants have been hired. We're getting ready to go into community consultations. So that work is moving along quite well. And it's got a few phases to it as per Councillor Smith's motion. So we are moving that whole visioning, which really is that forward thinking piece around Africville and the municipality, but it's involving not just the the standard organizations related to Africville, but also in individual community members and those who might have opposing interests. We're hoping to pull all of that together to then look at a visioning plan for Africville. And this piece of work, I am not expecting that we would have this done quickly to get back to the African Descent Advisory Committee. I would expect it's going to be at least a few meetings. The interesting thing is that in between this motion and us getting back to them, they're going to get those updates on what's happening with REPAC, and they can see the alignment. What's happening with the Visioning Project, they can see the alignment. This motion might be a little ahead of itself because they may not have all the information that we're hoping to provide to them that would encompass information on Africville too. So as far as timeline for fulfilling this motion, I would say it would take some time. I don't have a whole lot of resources to be able to do this research. Yeah, it will take us some time at least to fulfill this request.
Thank you for that. Just a note for those who might be watching us, REPAC is the Road to Economic Prosperity for African Canadian Communities, which is work being done by the partnership and by HRM, really important work. Councillor Hensby, you've got your hand up. Yeah, we're giving you a sec. Take your time.
I've been having internet issues here again this morning. Anyway, yeah, I listened in on the committee meeting, the discussion about this whole issue, and I know the constituent, the committee member Jerry Taylor was asking a lot of questions about it, and I think that as Tracy was saying, I'm not sure if they know of all the information that's available out there, because I sent a note about the link to the municipal archives. They have an extraordinary amount of data and information and the story of Africville on the municipal archive site. And I wasn't sure if Mr. Taylor and the other committee members were even aware of that information. So as Tracy said, is like that the committee may need to be brought up to speed of what information is out there in the public domain already in different areas, and see what pieces might be missing from their perspective from that story.
Okay, I lost the screen there, but are we all good? Okay? That was a question, David?
Well, I just want to know if the link to the municipal archives, the story of Africville, was shared with committee members. I know I sent that along to I think I might have sent it to Jerry, but I wasn't sure if I sent it to the clerk's office to have it sent to the committee members or not. I don't know if that was done.
Does anybody know that?
Do you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I'm not sure, Councillor Hensby, if that link was shared, but we can follow up to ensure that it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other hands, so I'm just wondering, are we on the question? One of the things it seems to me we should do, we've done it with a couple other committees, is we should have somebody from the African Descent Advisory Committee come to executive, and we should have a conversation and understand and discuss with them what their expectations are with us and vice versa. So we should do that regardless. I think I'll leave that with Katie and Tracy. There's no other questions, so the motion is on the floor. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I just want to, can everybody just come off their, I need to see a show of hands. That wasn't very convincing me. All those in favor of the motion, a show of hands?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? So that is carried. So please pass along, Katie, or I'm not sure, Tracy, probably Katie, our appreciation to the committee and their willingness to and desire to work more closely and have a meeting together. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, and your team. 13.3.1 is the Women's Advisory Committee, the annual report.
Yes, Dr. J. McCain Nesbitt has joined the meeting and will be
good.
giving a presentation on this item.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's my third opportunity to speak with you, and I've always really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. But I have to begin by pointing out that there's an error on my very first slide. I'm no longer the chair of this committee. I'm the past chair. So my apologies for that. I'm speaking to you about the activities of our past year during which I was the chair. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. So next slide, please. Today, I'm just going to highlight some of the activities that we've undertaken and some of the outcomes that have emerged from our activities. Next slide, please. So we met every month except June. Like many committees, we were canceled due to fires. And in August, we took a break. And we met virtually except for April and October. And next slide, please. So our current committee members, I just really want to say thank you to all of our committee members. The work that's happened has been as a result of the hard work of these committee members, their commitment to the women in the HRM, and the intelligence that they bring to the task. Our current committee members are Elizabeth Fraser, Jackie Gahagan, who's the chair now, Sonia Ikaloa, Hannah Jackson, and Councillor Kenton Lovelace serve as councillor members, and I'm the past chair. Next slide. These were members of the committee who had to resign during the year. So we lost Haneen El-Noman, Maggie Huao, Liz Vickers-Drennan, and Christine Yang. And on this point, I just need to take this opportunity to point out that while our full complement of committee members is 11, we actually went through the year with only 6 community members. We should have had, of course, 9. And we're currently down to 5 community members. So I'm aware that the new public appointments policy was approved in August, which allows for timely replacement of members for committees that resign. And we've talked with the clerk's office about this, and we look forward to a more timely replacement of members who resign so that we can operate through the year with a full committee. Next slide, please. So we understand our role, I think, very well, that we are to be an advisory committee to the council through the executive standing committee. And we will certainly respond to any requests that come to us. But because the requests may not be that frequent, we also identify for ourselves priorities for learning about issues that might impact women in the HRM. So this year, our committee identified 3 priorities for learning. The first had to do with the health, safety, and wellness of women. The second had to do with women's involvement in non-traditional roles. And the third had to do with housing security. Next slide, please. So while we undertake this learning so that we could perform our role as an advisory committee more effectively, a kind of unintended consequence of that is that we actually ended up giving voice to many women who would otherwise not have had their voices heard. And of course, thanks to this technology that we now enjoy, the women who speak to us have a broader audience in the community in the HRM. So as do the HRM staff that we invited. So next slide, please. With regard to our first priority, which was to do with the health, safety, and wellness of women, we focused on human trafficking, and we had 2 community members speak to us about this. Jennifer Holman, who is a speaker and author, talked about her work as an advocate, and Wendolyn Brown as founder of Empowerment for Hope, and she spoke to us about a survivor's perspective on human trafficking. We also, next slide, please. We also heard from HRM staff with regard to health, safety, and wellness. We heard from Stephen Cushing, an architect with HRM, who talked to us about the HRM's park lighting strategy. Amy Siciliano, who talked to us about the HRM's renewed public safety strategy. Amy Brierly talked to us about the HRM Women's Safety Assessment Tool. And Cassidy Yochov spoke to us about the HRM's recreation funding access program so that we could learn more about all of these HRM programs. So next slide, please. Our second priority had to do with women's involvement in non-traditional roles. And to this end, we were really pleased to have an in-person roundtable event where we invited all of the women counselors to come and present. Unfortunately, Councillor Stoddard couldn't join us that day. And we also invited MLA Lorelei Nickel to attend because some of you may remember, as a counselor, she was instrumental in the formation of the Women's Advisory Committee. And these women, we also invited members of the public to attend this meeting and members of other committees, and we did have some attend. And these women spoke to us about their experiences getting elected to and holding office. And we learned a lot and were inspired, but we were also really pleased to hear them tell us that they appreciated, and they could speak to it themselves. Councillor Cuttle was there, as was the Deputy Mayor, that they really appreciated the opportunity to talk to each other and to learn from each other and to kind of get to know each other better. Next slide, please. With regard to non-traditional roles, we also heard from artist Jo Napier, who is an artist and founder of the Great Women's Portraits Project. All of you should be aware of this. She uses portrait art to try to bring attention to the involvement of women in and the significant accomplishments of women, especially those in science, technology, engineering, and math. And I can tell you, after getting to know Jo and her focus on portrait art, I've now started to notice the absence of portraits of women in public places. Next slide, please. We also heard from some staff members with regard to this priority. We heard from Connor O'Day, who presented to us on Engage Nova Scotia and Research Nova Scotia and their work. And Britt Wilson spoke to us about the HRM's human resources policy. Next slide, please. So our third priority had to do with housing security for women, especially with regard to homelessness, affordability, and shelters. We heard from Veronica Marsman, who's a property manager, and Cheyenne Jones, who's an assistant property manager with ACOMA, about their affordable housing plan for women and their significant accomplishments there. We heard from Ren Thomas, who is associate professor at Dow, and she spoke to us about affordable housing in the HRM. And we heard actually from Max Chauvin, who's of course, seems to me everybody knows Max these days, but about the affordable housing initiatives in the HRM. And he brought along with him Gail Collicutt, who is the director of the Elizabeth Fry Society, and she gave us her perspective on affordable housing. Next slide, please. So, as I said, Max Chauvin spoke to us, as did Jillian McClellan and Jamie Ellen Klenovich, who is principal planners and planners with the Halifax affordable housing issues. So, as you can see, we heard from a lot of people over a series of meetings, and all of these people, I believe, provided significant information and provided inspiration, and we were happy to give voice to those people. So next slide, please. So some of the outcomes that happened as a result of our work was that, of course, the first one had to do with our request to the Executive Standing Committee, and thank you to the Executive Standing Committee for supporting this, which had to do with creating a report, or asking the staff to create a report on the creation of a rebate program for municipal campaign contributions. Essentially, what happened when we heard from the women councillors when they came together, they talked about the difficulties people in municipal elections have with regard to funding, and we wanted to support them there. We also, our members of our committee are very concerned about the ability of developers to provide cash in lieu of affordable housing units, and we were happy with the council's action that they took, where they determined that it was a developer needed to provide affordable housing rather than cash in lieu, and we sent a letter of support to you, Mayor Savage, and to council for that. We appreciate that. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a correction on my last point there. I just wanted to say that as a result of Wendell Brown meeting at our presentation to our meeting, Councillor Lovelace has begun to work with her, but it's not on education. It's really centering on providing a support center for women and people who've experienced human trafficking. So it's not education, it's around a support center. So next slide, please. So essentially, again, I want to just say to you, Mayor Savage, and to the Executive Standing Committee, how much we appreciate your support when we have brought issues forward to you. And we hope you will continue to do that in the past. And next slide, please. I also want to thank the HRM staff who work so closely with us to make sure that we are as effective as we can be. We have Tracy Jones Grant, of course, you know, Bailey Brown, who's an advisor on gender equity, Amy Brierly, who's social policy strategist, and of course, Elizabeth McDonald, without whose help, we basically would never keep on track. So I do appreciate Elizabeth's work. And I just also want to take this opportunity, since probably it'll be my last opportunity as the chair of the Women's Advisory Committee to speak to you, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the committee. I'm just speaking on my own behalf to you, Mayor and Council. I think it's been a very tough year with fires, floods, housing, rapid growth of the city. And I think it's a tough job that you have. And I want to say, I appreciate very much the leadership you and the committee and the council have provided to us, to me, and our citizens in the HRM. So thank you very much for that. And that's it. That's what I have to say today. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not great on questions, but I'll do my best.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. McKay-Nesbitt, and thank you for your leadership on the committee. It's obvious that you have taken on a lot of study and work, so thank you for that. I have one question before I put the motion on the floor, if I can. I don't see any of the names, but one of the things that's very disturbing in politics these days is the polarization that's led to threats of violence and actual violence, intimidation, and a lot of it is misogynistic and sexist. Some very good friends of mine on the national stage, Mayoress, the mayor of Gatineau, France Bellil, quit politics a few weeks ago because she didn't want to be part of the toxic culture. Jyoti Gondek, who's the mayor of Calgary, who's I have a great deal of time for and really have a good relationship with, has faced some extraordinary threats, largely based, I think, on misogyny. I'm just wondering if in your conversations with some of the councillors on the call today and others, if that came up as a topic and whether you would have any thoughts on how do we try to deal with that?
Oh, that is a huge problem. I recognize that. And yes, when the councillors got together, that did come up. Women councillors did talk about some of the tough things they've had to listen to. And I certainly don't have any answer for it. I'm long in the tooth. I've worked on women's issues since the early 1970s. And I really, really regret that now when we finally see some women who are willing to step forward and provide us with leadership, that they are under assault. I suspect it has something to do with social media, the lack of manners, I would call it. But others want to speak, so I'm sorry. I don't have a big answer for this. I think we just have to keep working with our young women and young men and help them learn to be civil and kind and have some manners.
That's good advice. I despair somewhat, but that's good advice. I'm gonna go to Councillor Mancini. Can you put the motion on the floor, Tony, and then, do you have the
Certainly.
motion? It's just to accept the,
We put full in motion on the floor that the Executive Standing Committee accept the report dated January 9th, 2024. So moved.
Second,
second by the deputy, Tony?
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Dr. McKay Nesbitt. No questions, but I just have a comment. You know, very often when we have advisory committee, that their work is really, a lot of their work is determined on what comes to them. This committee, and obviously it's a leadership thing, has taken an initiative to educate themselves to a long list of people that you had present to the committee. And I just want to say, good for you and good for the committee. And I think maybe there's a lesson for some of our other advisory committees that wait for stuff to come to them. And this committee has chosen to go out there. So I think that's a lesson learned. And if I have any interaction with some of those other advisory committees, I'm going to point to this committee and say, hey, you know, don't wait for us. Go out there, educate yourself, and even initiate comments or requests. So just a job well done. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you. And as I always have said to the committee, you know, we need to do both. You know,
Right.
just because we're doing this doesn't mean we also cannot be responsive. So when things come to us, our task is to respond to those and to do our diligence in bringing them forward. But in the meantime, we do this. Thank you.
And I'll be honest too, when the committee was initially struck, you mentioned former Councillor Laura Nicol, who led the charge on that, and I was very happy that she did. But then we wouldn't hear a lot of what's going on in the committee, and then so today, and I was anticipating, you know, I was looking forward to the report and thinking, wow, that's great, because I didn't really realize what the work was done. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else?
oh, I lost my hand.
Councillor Daigle Gammon?
Thank you,
Deputy
Mr. Mayor. I lost my hand. I was like, I thought it was up there. I just wanted to say thank you so very much, Dr. McKay Nesbitt. It's such a pleasure to be in your company, and truly the leadership that you showed on this committee made a big difference. But I also want to say what I enjoyed in the meeting that I had there was your ability to make sure that every voice was heard. You were very encouraging if people were quiet and a little bit probing. So yeah, just really wanted to share my thanks and appreciation for your work and how you led this committee. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready for the question, colleagues?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, that is carried. We will go to 13.3.2, Women's Advisory Committee. This is the 2024 work plan.
I can put that
Councilwoman-
motion on the floor if you like, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I move that the Executive Standing Committee review and approve the Women's Advisory Committee 2024 work plan.
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Tuttle. You ready for the question on that?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. So, Dr. McKay Nesbitt, I do very much appreciate your style and your work and your reporting back to the committee and the relationship that we've had with you and the committee. Thank you for that. I do hope you'll pass on to Ms. Gahagan our anxiousness to continue the relationship with her as chair, and that I know that there's some good work ahead of us. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure I count on Jackie. She's going to do a great job, and she will be equally as effective, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have no motions. We have some in-camera items. Does somebody want to move the minutes?
Please move the minutes, Mr. Mayor. I think almost all of these we can do in public, unless the clerk corrects me. But I'll move the minutes.
Seconded by Councillor Mancini. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
The minutes are carried. Is there an appetite to look at some other ones?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I had a question on 15.2. I thought
Okay.
We can go in camera on that one. Anybody else?
How about 15-3? Do we want to try that?
the rest I have no problem with the other nominations for all the other committee reports.
Yeah, I had a
move-
question on 15-3, but I probably could have passed it, but if we're going in camera anyway, let's not do that one yet. Let's do that in camera. 15.4.
I move that the executive standing
Sorry, I
committee
have
would
questions
adopt
about
the rec. Oh, sorry, Tony.
Sir, I
Tony?
have questions about it, Councillor Mason, sorry.
On
15.
15.4?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Thing about this
15
job is if you're not an optimist, you shouldn't do it. So I'll keep trying. I'll try 15-4. How about that?
15.5.
15-5. Yeah. I'll move 15-5. Is that all right?
Is there a second for that one?
Second,
Councillor Mancini? If there's no discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? 15-6.
I'll move 15-6.
Second it.
Seconded by Councillor Hensby. Discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 15-6 is carried. If somebody wants to move, we go in camera. We'll deal with the rest of them.
so moved.
Moved by Councillor Mancini, second Councillor Hensby. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll go in camera. We'll go to the other screen, right, Katie?
Yes, please leave this meeting and then join separate meeting.
Katie, does it look like we have everybody? I think we're good to go. Katie, we're good to go?
You're good, Mr. Mayor.
We're good? Okay, thank you. Item, we'll ratify the work we did in camera. I'll go to 15.2, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you much, Mr. Mayor, that the Executive Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private confidential report dated January 18th, 2024. And two, direct that the private confidential report dated January 18th, 2024 be maintained private confidential.
Thank you very much. Ready for the question, colleagues? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 15.3, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Executive Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated January 22nd, 2024, and two, direct that the private and confidential report dated January 22nd, 2024 be maintained private and confidential.
Second, Councillor Cuddle. Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. 15.4, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put the following motion on the floor that the Executive Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendation as outlined in the private and confidential report dated January 16, 2024. And two, direct the private and confidential report dated January 16, 2024 be maintained private and confidential. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second, Councillor Cuddle. Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That is carried. Item 15.5 and 15.6 were dealt with in public. There are no added items. Notices of motion. See no notices of motion. Our next meeting is March the 25th. Right after the Junos. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. We're adjourned, folks. Thank you very much. Thanks, staff.
Thank you.
Thank